You were born. You opened your eyes for the first time. You heard a voice. You felt warmth. You tasted food. You took your first steps. You said your first word. And you remember none of it. Not a single moment, not one frame. Most people assume the answer is simple. Your brain wasn't ready yet. You were too young. But that's not quite right. And the real answer is far stranger than you'd expect. Because your baby brain wasn't failing to record your life, it was recording everything. The memories were there. Something destroyed them. In 1905, Sigmund Freud became the first person to put a name to this. He called it infantile amnesia. But Freud got the cause wrong. And it took another century of neuroscience to figure out what was actually happening inside that small, rapidly growing brain of yours. Here is the first thing you need to know. Babies can form memories. This is not a theory. It is a fact, demonstrated in one of the most elegant experiments in developmental psychology. In the 1980s, psychologist Carolyn Rovi Collier at Rutgers University tied a ribbon from a baby's ankle to a mobile hanging above their crib. The babies quickly learned that kicking made the mobile move. They loved it. When she brought the same babies back days later, they remembered. They started kicking immediately. 2-month-olds held that memory for days. 6-month-olds held it for weeks. Your infant brain could learn. It could store information. It could retrieve it on demand. But by adulthood, every trace of those early memories is gone. And for decades, no one could fully explain why. The first part of the answer is structural. Deep inside your brain sits a curved, seahorse-shaped structure called the hippocampus. It is the engine of memory formation. Without it, you cannot take a lived experience and encode it as something you can later replay. In adults, the hippocampus works with the prefrontal cortex to tag, sort, and store episodes from your life. But in infants, this system is severely underdeveloped. The connections are still being built. The dentate gyrus, which acts as the gateway for new memories entering long-term storage, is not fully wired until somewhere between ages 2 and 4. So your infant brain could form short-term memories. It just could not move them into permanent storage the way your adult brain does now. But that is only half the story. And what comes next is the part that should stop you cold. In 2014, neuroscientists Sheena Jocelyn and Paul Franklin at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto published a study in the journal Science that reframed everything. Their hypothesis sounded almost absurd. What if the very process that builds your brain is also what destroys your memories? Here is what they found. In the first years of life, your hippocampus produces new neurons at an extraordinary rate. This is called neurogenesis. Those new neurons are essential. They wire up the circuits you will use for the rest of your life. But every time a new neuron integrates into an existing circuit, it disrupts the connections already there, the connections that were holding your memories in place. To test this, they manipulated neurogenesis in mice. When they artificially increased neurogenesis in adult mice, those mice forgot things they had previously learned. When they slowed neurogenesis in infant mice, those infant mice held on to their memories far longer than normal. The conclusion was deeply counterintuitive. Your baby brain was not too weak to hold memories. It was too busy growing. The same explosion of new neurons that built your brain also overwrote the memories stored inside it. Your earliest experiences were not lost because they were never saved. They were lost because your brain kept building new rooms and tearing down the old walls in the process. But there is another layer, and this one might be the strangest part of all. To form what scientists call autobiographical memory, the kind where you are the main character of a story you can replay in your mind, you need something most adults take completely for granted. You need a sense of self. You need to understand that you exist as a separate person, that things are happening to you. Developmental psychologists Mark Howe and Mary Courage argued in the late 1990s that this is a critical missing piece. Before roughly 18 to 24 months of age, infants do not recognize themselves as distinct individuals. The classic test is simple. Put a dot of rouge on a baby's nose and place them in front of a mirror. Before 18 months, they treat the reflection like another child. They reach toward the mirror. After 18 months, they reach for their own face. That moment, the birth of self-recognition, tracks almost exactly with the earliest age at which autobiographical memories can form. You cannot remember being a baby partly because there was no you yet, not in the way you experience yourself now. There was no narrator inside your head packaging experience into a story that belonged to a continuous person, which raises a question that is genuinely unsettling. Is the baby in your old photographs actually you? Or is it someone else entirely? Someone who lived in the same body, but whose mind was literally disassembled and rebuilt, neuron by neuron, into the person you became. Then there is language, and this is where memory stops being just biology and starts being something cultural. Developmental psychologist Catherine Nelson spent years studying how children form lasting memories. Her conclusion was precise. Language does not just describe memories, it structures them. Before you could speak, your experiences were encoded as raw sensory impressions, sounds, textures, emotions, light. But without words to organize them, those impressions had no skeleton to attach to, no framework that could survive. Once children begin speaking, and especially once they begin having conversations with caregivers about past shared events, their ability to form lasting memories improves dramatically. Memory needs language, the way water needs a container. Without it, the experience exists in the moment, and then it is gone. Psychologist Chi Wang at Cornell University took this further. She found that the age of your earliest memory actually varies depending on the culture you were raised in. In Western cultures, where parents frequently narrate their children's experiences, asking questions and building personal stories together, earliest memories tend to start around age 3.5. Among the Maori of New Zealand, whose oral tradition places extraordinary emphasis on personal history and storytelling from birth, average first memories reach back to age 2.5. In some East Asian cultures, where early childhood narratives focus less on the individual child's experience, first memories tend to start closer to age 4 or later. The culture you were born into literally determines how far back you can see into your own past. Now, here is the part that most explanations leave out, and it may be the most important part of all. Your earliest experiences did not disappear without a trace. They were not erased cleanly. They were absorbed. Psychologist John Bowlby spent decades building what became attachment theory, later expanded through Mary Ainsworth's experiments in the 1970s, showing that the quality of care you received in the first 2 years of your life, the consistency of comfort when you were distressed, the attunement of a caregiver's face, the predictability of warmth, wired patterns into your nervous system that you are still running today. You cannot remember the experiences that built those patterns, but the patterns are active right now. They are in the way your body tightens before a difficult conversation. They are in the speed at which you extend trust to a stranger. They are in what your nervous system decides to do when the person you love goes suddenly quiet. Memory is not just a recording device. It is a prediction engine. Your brain does not store experiences as complete files to be replayed. It stores patterns, emotional tones, cause and effect associations, and uses them to anticipate what comes next. Your infant brain was doing exactly this. It was not storing episodes. It was building the operating system. The first chapter of your life was the most formative chapter ever written, and you were never given access to read it. But some of it surfaces anyway, not as memory, as feeling, a smell that brings inexplicable ease, a certain quality of light that makes your whole body relax without knowing why, a voice with a specific tone that your nervous system decides to trust within seconds. These are not coincidences. These are fragments of the archive without the file name attached. Your brain remembers the pattern without remembering the moment that created it. So here is what actually happened to your earliest years. Your hippocampus was not ready to build long-term memories. And even when it started to, the flood of new neurons tore through the circuits that held them. You had no concept of self to anchor experiences to. You had no language to give those experiences a structure that could survive. And the culture around you had not yet handed you the tools to narrate your own story. It was not one failure. It was everything, all at once. Every human being who has ever lived has gone through this. Every person you have ever met carries a black hole where the first years of their life should be. The answer to why is not that your brain was too simple. It is that your brain was doing something far more important than remembering. It was becoming you. And that process required, quite literally, destroying the person who came before. Tonight, when you try to reach back to your very first memory and find nothing, that blankness is not emptiness. It is the foundation. Everything you are was built on top of it. You cannot see it because you are standing on it. The first years of your life are still inside you. You just stopped being able to remember them the moment you became old enough to try.